Bread & Butter has dropped their newest paddle, which is a first of its kind featuring a titanium carbon fiber blend face. Do I think that titanium itself is a crazy, groundbreaking performance booster? I don't know, but at the very least, I think it's a pretty cool concept and gives the paddle face itself a pretty killer and aesthetically pleasing look. One thing I can say about Bread & Butter is they're certainly not bland or cookie cutter with their paddle designs. And surprisingly enough, I actually think the Shogun is the best performing paddle that Bread & Butter has produced thus far, and in terms of performance, I did think this was a pretty good improvement when compared to their previous Filth model. In fact, I like this paddle so much that it's easily in my top 5 paddles alongside other paddles like the Mark I, the Pursuit Engage Pro N 6.0, and the Neonic Flow. And another thing I've really got to tip my hat to Bread & Butter for is they stand alongside companies like 𝐋𝐈𝐒 and Engage in that they offer a true 30-day return policy. Not a return if unused or unwrapped or resell it yourself policy, but they really do take the risk of their customers liking their paddles on themselves, let you try their paddles, and stay true to that if you don't love it, return it policy. And with this channel's discount code PBMED, the price of the Shogun comes to $160, which I think is a really fair price for this paddle. And I also really respect the fact that Bread & Butter didn't jack the price of this paddle to the moon with the invitation of a new paddle material. People are probably wondering how the Shogun stacks up against the Filth and other paddles in general, so let's get into it, starting with specs, stats, and performance. The Shogun is elongated at 16.5 inches long and 7.37 inches wide. It's also 16 millimeters thick and has a 5.5 inch handle. This gives it the exact same footprint as other paddles like the Filth or the YOLO Perseus, while making it slightly different than some other elongated paddles like the Engage Pursuit Pro 1 or the Honolulu J7K, in the fact that they retain those square corners as opposed to the rounded corners that some of these paddles have adopted. And even though it incorporates the new use of titanium in this paddle face, it's still the same thermoform process that we're used to with the unibody shape and the foam injection in the perimeter edges. Mine came in with a swing weight of 120 and a twist weight of 6.12, giving it a similar feel in your hand to the previous Filth and the Engage Pursuit MX. Spin was good and pretty much on par with most other good Kevlar or carbon fiber paddles, and though I certainly don't think it's going to leave anyone feeling like they need more spin, when I hit this paddle alongside the Filth, spin was one thing that I found to be pretty comparable in a good way, and I don't think most people will be able to tell a difference between the two. And in terms of performance, I did think the Shogun showed significant improvement, and I liked the way that it played better than the Filth. The Filth has a sort of stiff, almost hollow feel to it, and I felt the sweet spot was on the small side. The new Shogun was noticeably more stable and forgiving than the Filth, and when compared to the Filth, I thought that it had an improved and larger sweet spot, and it had a more dense feel to it when hitting the ball. The Filth definitely has one of the more stiff faces that I've felt when testing paddles, and as a result, the ball tends to have a very low dwell time and react off the face quickly. This definitely gave the Filth a high pop level rating, and though the Shogun is still a little bit more on the stiff side, I found it to be a little less stiff than the Filth, and it had just a little bit more dwell time. The Shogun also had just a little bit less pop, which I'd characterize as maybe a 1 point on a 10-point scale decrease. And holding them side by side, one in each hand, I did think the Shogun was maybe just a sliver more heavy. And even though it was just a sliver more heavy, I did feel that in gameplay, the Shogun performed better and hit harder on drives and serves. In my opinion, the improved sweet spot and improved stability were both huge. And putting that alongside a slight increase in power and a small decrease in pop made these game-changing differences. As I found the Shogun to be a power paddle that was much easier to use, and for me, I felt comfortable playing with it in my very first game of testing. With the fair price, high performance, and uniqueness of this paddle, it's easy for me to put the Shogun in my easy to recommend category. And by comparison, depending on what you're looking for in a paddle, I'd really put the Shogun beside two other paddles that I think a lot of people would like that are really easy to adjust to. Kevlar Huarache X Control with its lighter feel and its all-court playing style. The other being Mark Pickleball's Mark I with its good power and slightly higher levels of pop than the Shogun, but being slightly shorter in the hybrid shaped paddle category. and the Bread & Butter Shogun, making this a trio with its great levels of power, moderate levels of pop, and the added length from the elongated shape. So overall, I think this really is an awesome paddle, and it's in my small circle of favorites. I don't necessarily think the addition to titanium to the paddle face is a crazy huge deal, but at least for this paddle, I certainly do think it improved performance when compared to the Bread & Butter Filth. I think it's a cool concept, and it gave the paddle face a pretty cool look. That's my take on the new Bread & Butter Titanium Shogun paddle. I hope the review was helpful, and if it was, slap that subscribe button, and I'll catch you here for the next one.